CSU Officer Phil Morris will be able to confiscate your guns even though he's a violent predator. Contact these Colorado legislators to demand that they amend the red flag law to include a Colorado citizen's right to file an ERPO against a law enforcement officer. This is a message from myself, Susan Holmes, from Fort Collins, Colorado. If you've reviewed my channel, you have seen that I've done a number of videos exposing the ring of corruption in law enforcement and the judiciary in Fort Collins, Colorado. I found that it's very important for people to act in a way that can end police secrecy and end police violence. In this video, I'm addressing an amendment to the red flag gun law that has recently been implemented in Colorado. This amendment is very, very important for this law because it would help to end police violence. Now, what I want to tell the public and about has to do with, first, let me say this. I've had to think about this a lot, but I want to be able to communicate it in a way that the public can really get this and understand what I'm trying to share with them and how significant this amendment could be that I am now promoting. And I will be asking all the representatives on this act to amend this act with this new group that I believe should be included in this law. Before I go into that, I want to acknowledge a lot of the people in Colorado, including some of the sheriffs, who come out and said that they would not support this act. Because a number of people know, many people know that this red flag gun law is just a backdoor for gun confiscation. And I will acknowledge those people and acknowledge that yes, that's true. It's a backdoor way for gun confiscation. Now, what people need to understand is that even though a number of sheriffs have taken a position on this gun law, this red flag law, stating that they would not enforce it, I want to let the Colorado people know that that doesn't matter. Even though these sheriffs may have good intentions in terms of protecting your constitutional right to protect yourself and have a gun, even though they have a good intention, it doesn't matter because this is a state law. It's been passed and it is now being implemented. So even though a sheriff may say, hey, I'm not going to promote this or I'm not going to support it, we're not going to act upon this and act with this law, it doesn't matter because anyone in the sheriff's department can go file an extreme risk protection order, an ERPO. This law, this red flag gun law, allows 2 or 3 different groups of people to go directly to the district court and file an ERPO. Now, even if a sheriff makes that statement and he speaks to his fellow law enforcement officers, we're not going to support this because it's anti-constitutional, it won't matter. Because if there's any law enforcement officer who feels that someone is a threat, they don't have to go through the sheriff. They don't have to go through any protocol. They can walk directly to the district court and file an ERPO on their own. That's it. They don't have to have the okay of the sheriff. They don't have to have the okay of any police chief. The law is coded so in it states any law enforcement officer can file an ERPO. No protocols they have to go through. So even though the sheriff and other people might have good intentions, it doesn't matter. All it takes is one or two officers under the sheriff or in any police department to say, hey, I feel like filing one of these. I think this person's a threat, and they can go do it. They won't be fired for doing that because it's state law. So if the public thinks they're going to be protected by their sheriffs, that they're going to be insulated with this law by a sheriff's positions, that's not going to work. That concept, you have to face reality. It's not going to work. It won't work. At some point, some officer is going to decide to do it, and they'll do it independent of what any sheriff thinks. So everybody has to face reality about this law. We all know it's a backdoor for gun confiscation. Now, here are the groups. In a general way, here are the groups that this law allows to file an ERPO. Directly, just walk into your district court and file one. Of course, there's procedures you have to follow, and of course, eventually you're going to have to provide evidence for your filing. But anyone can do it in these groups that they have designated in this law. One of the groups is family, with lots of definitions of what family is. One of the groups is member householders, and a few definitions with that. The other group is law enforcement officer. Any law enforcement officer can file an ERPO if they deem somebody with a gun to be threatening or creating a risk for themselves or anyone else. All subjective, based on the intelligence and training of that brilliant law enforcement officer. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. It's all subjective, and it gives police enormous power. We know that. However, I have designed a very simple amendment. Anyone could have done it. But this amendment will actually help any citizen in Colorado when they're dealing with the abuse of power by police. And believe me, the police are going to abuse this power. There's no question. This whole act was designed to increase police powers without oversight. So the other thing I want to state too about this amendment, it's a very simple amendment. It's basically that this act or this law should be amended to include any Colorado citizen who wants to file an ERPO against a law enforcement officer that they feel is violent and threatening with their gun. That is a group that I believe should be included in this law. And they can amend it to include this group. The public needs to understand that this is an opportunity for you, for the first time, to have any protection against police and their gun violence. Some of the biggest perpetrators of gun violence in our country, in our state, and in our cities are police. I know that from firsthand experience. What I believe is if this amendment is put out there to the public, and the public takes it and they demand, go to your reps, go to your state senators, go to your representatives, and demand that they put this amendment into this law now. It will provide protection from police violence, and it will check their powers. It's very scary that this state has passed this law and given carte blanche to police to decide that they can go and file any kind of ERPO based on their subjective opinion. Yes, they do have to provide evidence. But do you think a judge is going to listen to an officer? Yeah. Judges always fine for police officers. They can say and do anything they want, and generally the judges will fine for them. And the DAs support it. There's serious corruption going on in our governments everywhere, and the police are a major part of it. And they're major perpetrators of police violence with guns. The very people who are supposed to confiscate the guns are the police, are the people that perpetrate gun violence themselves and walk away. Never any consequences. Never. The DA always clears and justifies police violence, and then they support it through police secrecy by having the police departments withhold records. The police don't have to give you any records. It's based on their discretion. That word alone is codified into state law under the Colorado Criminal Justice Records Act. The police can withhold any record they want, just based, quote unquote, on their discretion. It's antiquated. It's ridiculous, and it does not support citizens' constitutional rights at all. In fact, if there was a constitutional challenge to this Colorado Criminal Justice Act, I believe that constitutional challenge would win. My point in stating this is that I support, and I am going to continue to support, an amendment to this red flag gun law in Colorado that would provide all Colorado citizens with a right to protect themselves from police violence. I want to explain a little bit more here that there is no law that protects any citizen in the United States, in your state or in your city, from police violence. Police can do whatever they want to you and get away with it. They do it all the time. The police commit crimes all the time, and they walk away from them. The DA always justifies any murder or homicide by police, always. They will never find against the police. Qualified immunity is the other piece that plays into this. If you file a civil lawsuit, qualified immunity comes into play. This has been going on for far too long and for too many decades. However, this amendment I'm proposing for this other group to be included in the red flag gun law would actually be the first law or first amendment attached to law that would actually protect a citizen from police violence. You would have the right to go in and file an ERPO on a threatening and violent police officer. And if you provided the right evidence, and if there was an ethical judge, that officer would lose his right to have a gun. This would be the first consequence ever coded into law that would protect any citizen in Colorado from police violence. There is no other law that protects you. None. Look it up. Police can do whatever they want to you and get away with it. Oh, well, you might say, well, wait a minute. You might want to be reasonable about this and say, well, we can file a complaint. Well, where would your complaint go? It would go to the police department. The very group of people that you would be filing your complaint with are the people who oversee the person who violated you, another police officer. They don't find against each other, very rarely. That's a fallacy. To think that you are protected by police and by their complaint process is a fallacy. Huge fallacy that has been promoted for decades. They can plant evidence. They can plant evidence in your car. They can plant evidence on you. They can use a body camera to make it appear as if you are violent by just shouting at the beginning, stop resisting, stop resisting. Or put that down, put that down. And then they turn their body camera on just before they do that, so they can set you up. Then they can take the body camera footage to the crime lab, and the crime lab will alter it for them, and the audio. That happens all the time. Police get away with crimes all the time. I know some of you believe that you know some good police officers out there. Yes, they may exist. But the system is completely corrupt. And genuine police officers know this is true. Because if they want to maintain their salary and their career, they look the other way. While the leadership and anyone who is committing the crimes is allowed to go forward with it. I've personally experienced that. I've proven it. You can look at all my videos on my channel. I have proven that in Fort Collins there's a ring of corruption between the judiciary, the police, and the district attorneys. But you won't find that reported because everyone's afraid in the media to report this, or in my case, the Coloradoans in on it. Somebody at that media works with this group. I know that. And you can, once again, listen to my videos on my channel. But I'm here because I'm providing a solution. The solution is an amendment to the red flag gun law. And that amendment is that any Colorado citizen should be able to file an ERPO against a threatening and violent police officer. They need consequences. And this amendment would provide it, and it would be, like I said before, the first step in citizens of Colorado to actually have real protection against police abuse of powers. Please take that amendment I suggested, write it down, take it, email it, tweet it, call your reps and tell them you want this amendment passed. You want this amendment to the red flag gun law. It's fair. It's more than fair. If they're not willing to amend the law to include an ERPO against a violent police officer, well, what does that tell you? That's going to tell you a lot. It's going to tell you, it will confirm that they don't want you to have any rights. If they're not willing to amend the red flag law with that simple group added to it, that tells you that your reps are working against you. I can tell you for a fact that my representatives in Fort Collins are working against me. I went to Representative Jenny Arndt. I went to Representative Guinell when she was a representative. She's now a state senator. I went to both of them in 2018 in the fall and asked them to please run my bill, the Jeremy Holmes Act. You can see my video about the Jeremy Holmes Act. That would have checked police powers in their homicides. That would have made records, digital records with police, transparent in a police homicide. But they chose not to run it. And they chose not to run it this year either. What they did choose to do is pass this law, the red flag gun law, that gave police more powers and more opportunities to abuse their status. You can look at the names on the bill. Representative Jenny Arndt and State Senator Guinell are on that bill. They had a chance to change the world in Colorado and in Fort Collins and make police more transparent so that we did not have to be subjected to police crime. But they chose not to do it. It's time for people to vote people into office who are not career politicians. Both of these people I talked about are career politicians. We need a change. We need the people in Colorado to be protected by law. And we need our government to be completely transparent. And the people of Colorado, the citizens of Colorado, and the citizens in our nation need to have access to their government records. Please support this amendment that I am promoting. Test your reps and your senators and demand that they make this amendment to the Colorado red flag gun law. Thank you. Susan Holmes.